You ever just stop and think about how weird your own brain is? I mean, you can't remember the password you literally just created yesterday, but you can somehow recall, in perfect, vivid detail, some random squirrel you saw on a trip 2 years ago. It feels like our memory just has a mind of its own. Well, it turns out it kind of does. So let's dive into the fascinating science behind why our brains choose to keep some memories and, well, let others just float away.
Right? This is the big question. We all have these incredibly sharp, yet seemingly pointless memories stuck in our heads. The exact shape of a cloud, the pattern on a stranger's shirt, the taste of a coffee you had one time. Why do these mundane little moments get the VIP treatment in our memory, while the stuff we actually need to remember seems to just vanish into thin air? And this exact puzzle is what got Chen-Young Leo Lin, a researcher at Boston University, started on this whole journey. He had this super strong memory of just watching squirrels on a trip, a simple, playful moment. But the weird part was, that memory also seemed to lock in other, way more boring details from earlier that day, like some farm animals he'd passed on the road. For him, that was a huge clue that something much bigger was going on under the hood. And that clue leads us right here, to this idea of an emotional anchor. Honestly, from an evolutionary point of view, this makes a ton of sense. Our ancestors' survival depended on remembering stuff that came with a big emotional punch, like the rustle in the grass that meant predator, or the location of a tree that meant big meal. And what the new research shows is that our feelings are still the secret ingredient our brain uses to decide what's worth keeping. They act like this super powerful glue for our thoughts. So first, let's get our terms straight. Scientists call these fleeting, everyday moments fragile memories. Just think about your commute this morning, or what you ate for breakfast last Tuesday, or maybe the 10th email you opened today. These are the routine things our brains are actually designed to forget. Otherwise, we'd just be completely overwhelmed with useless data. Okay, so how does one of those fragile memories get saved from the recycling bin? It's through a process called memory enhancement. This is the brain's incredible power to reach back in time and say, whoa, hold on, that boring thing that just happened, it's actually important because of this emotional thing that happened right after it. It basically goes back and stamps that fragile memory with a big keep label. And this quote from study co-author Robert Reinhardt just nails the key shift in how we think about this. Your brain isn't just a camera passively recording everything it sees. Nope, it's an active curator, and it's constantly deciding what's valuable. An emotional event gives the brain a really powerful reason to go back and rescue those fragile memories right from the brink of being forgotten. So, if the brain is an active curator, what are its rules? How does it decide what to save and what to toss? Well, this new research from Boston University actually figured out the brain's filing system. Let's take a look. And look, this wasn't just some small study with a few people. The researchers were incredibly thorough. They did what's called a meta-analysis, which means they combined the results from 10 different studies, looking at data from over 650 people. That's the kind of scale that gives you real confidence you're seeing a true pattern in how our brains work. The experiment itself was pretty clever and simple. People looked at a bunch of neutral pictures, things like animals or tools. But every once in a while, a picture was tied to an emotional event, either a good one, like getting a cash reward, or a slightly bad one, like a mild, totally harmless electric shock. The real test, though, came the next day with a surprise pop quiz on what they remembered. Okay, now this is the core finding, and it's really cool. The brain uses two completely different rules, and it all depends on timing. For those fragile memories that happened before an emotional trigger, they were more likely to get saved if they were somehow related or similar. But for memories that happened after the emotional event, similarity didn't really matter. What mattered was just how important that emotional event felt. So the bottom line is, timing changes the rules of the game. And this is so much more than just a cool piece of brain trivia. Understanding these rules opens up some really incredible possibilities for how we can intentionally, hack our own memories. Let's look at what this actually means for the real world. The applications here are huge. For a teacher, it means that tying a boring lesson to a fun, rewarding puzzle could literally make that information stickier. For you and me, if you want to remember where you put your keys, you could try consciously pairing that action with an emotional anchor, like looking at a favorite family photo. And in medicine, this could be a whole new way to help people with dementia systematically strengthen those crucial daily memories.
But of course, science is never really done, is it? This study is a major leap forward, but the researchers are really clear about what they still need to figure out.
So right now we know what happens, but we don't know the nitty-gritty of how it's happening in the brain's wiring. The next big step is to use tools like brain imaging to literally watch these mechanisms unfold in real time. They also want to move beyond just simple pictures in a lab and see if these same rules hold up in the complex, messy, emotional situations we all deal with every single day. What this research does is provide some of the strongest evidence we've ever had in humans for a theory called behavioral tagging. The idea has been floating around from animal studies for a while, and it goes like this. When a fragile memory is first formed, the brain puts a little temporary tag on it. If a big emotional event happens soon after, the brain releases chemicals that go looking for those tags and then make the memory permanent. If nothing important happens, the tag just disappears, and so does the memory.
Cognitive neuroscientist Maria Wimber, who wasn't even involved in this study, just sums it up perfectly here. We tend to think of our memories as these fixed photos in an album. But they're not. They're alive, they're dynamic, and their ultimate fate can change completely based on what happens next. So if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Emotions are the anchors for our memories. They're the tools our brains use to reach back in time and tether those seemingly trivial moments, stopping them from just floating away. They are the reason you remember the squirrel, but not the password. And crucially, when that anchor drops, well, that changes everything.
And that really just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Our memories are so much more malleable than we ever thought. So, if you had the power to consciously create an emotional anchor and tether any one of your own fragile, fading memories to make it permanent, which one would you choose to save?